Hi YouTubers and welcome to Can't Cook with Jason. Today I'm going to show you another cracking air fryer recipe, roast pork belly. A juicy and flavoursome meat coupled with unrivaled crunch in that crispy top layer of crackling. This is one of the best roast meats you can make at home. So here's our pork belly. Not all cuts are the same, and we want one that has a good layer of fat and with the rib bones intact, as this will help impart flavour. To ensure even cooking, cut deeply into the meat, about halfway. If you have the rib bones in the meat, you will need to cut diagonally in line with the bones, so be careful not to ruin your knife. Add 1 tablespoon of Shaoxing Wine and carefully massage into the meat, into the cuts and around the sides of the pork. We want all the meat to be covered with the wine. Then add 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of sugar, 1 teaspoon of white pepper, 1 teaspoon of Chinese 5-spice. Then mix and rub everything all over the meat and making sure that you get that seasoning deep into the cuts. Now the most important part. As with any fat rendering process, we need to allow the fat to escape and run off the meat. Otherwise, it doesn't matter how well we dry the skin, it will soften and become soggy when that fat pools. So taking a skewer, prick as many holes into the fat layer as you can stomach, taking care not to go too deep and to penetrate the meat. I'm not going to lie, this is a pretty boring part of the process, but absolutely critical. Ooh, hello, what do we have here? You can buy a meat tenderizer which has lots of mini prongs to speed up this process. I'm not sure I like using this though, as I can't quite feel if it penetrates the thick rind or not. Now the drying process. Brush a thin layer of white vinegar onto the skin, which helps to draw out the moisture as it evaporates. Don't worry, you won't be able to taste the vinegar. Then sprinkle some salt onto the skin and pat this in to help further draw out and wick away moisture. Transfer the pork to a plate or a rack and leave uncovered in the fridge overnight. Better still, hang the pork to air dry in a cool, dry place if you can. After drying in the fridge, the skin is wrinkled and become dry and firm to touch, just what we want. Now grab a sheet of foil and we're going to make a little box around the pork. Firstly, to protect the side of the meat from the high heat of the oven, and secondly, to create a border for that salt. Leave a centimetre of foil higher than the pork, as this will effectively hold the salt in place. Once you're happy with your origami efforts, pour in enough coarse salt or rock salt to cover the entire pork. The salt acts as a giant sponge during the first part of the roasting process to further dehydrate that skin. Don't worry, we will be removing the salt partway through the cooking. However, try not to use fine salt, as this will make the pork way too salty and almost inedible. Once you've covered the pork, carefully transfer to your air fryer and cook for an initial 30 minutes on 120 degrees Celsius. After 30 minutes, remove from the air fryer and scrape off all the salt, as it's now done its job. I like to use a brush to remove as much of the salt as I can from the pork. At this point, you can see that the skin is almost hard to touch and very dry. Then brush a thin layer of vegetable oil or any high smoking point oil onto the skin. A very thin layer is all we need, and this will help to really crisp up the skin. Now let's add the pork back into the air fryer without the foil and crank the heat up to 200 degrees Celsius and cook for another 30 minutes. Okay, make or break time, let's have a look. Come on, that is epic. You can see the little bubbles which are crisped up to increase the surface area of light, airy pockets of crackling. After letting the pork sit out to rest uncovered for 5 to 10 minutes, it should be easier to handle and slightly cooled. Cut away the rib section and save them for a stock or to gnaw on afterwards. The flavour is insane. Then slice the pork into 1 to 2 centimetre strips, and then each strip into 1 to 2 centimetre bite-sized pieces, which is the perfect meat to crackling ratio. The meat is succulent, juicy and full of flavour with a few marinade ingredients that we used. I took a bite earlier and recorded the sound, which I know is a bit geeky, but listen to that crunch. Crackling. There we are, superb roast pork belly with a mega crackling and little mess and cleaning up to do thanks to the air fryer. If you liked the video, then please subscribe, click the bell for notifications of future air fryer recipes, and then like or leave a comment. Thanks for watching folks, and I'll catch you next week.